Hey, this is John from the Author Helper. I got a request asking how do I get a Word document inside of Scrivener? So we're going to cover that today. First thing is go ahead and create a new template in Scrivener, just a new project. So, open up Scrivener and then just say you wanted to create a blank project. Call it whatever you want to call it. I just called mine test, for example. The second thing, you're going to end up having a look similar to this. Yours might not say draft, it might say manuscript. Doesn't really matter for what we're doing. So wouldn't worry about that. It's also going to have this untitled thing as part of this. I'm going to go ahead and click that and drag it into the trash. Another option you can do is just right click on it and say move to trash. That's up to you. The reason why I'm doing that is because we're actually going to be splitting everything up anyway, so we don't really want to have to worry about that. But before I even get started there, I want to, outside of this whole section, I'm going to right click, I'm going to click add, and then I'm going to do new folder. And I'm going to show you why in just a second, but let's go ahead and call this front matter. And then let's right click on it, come down to change icon, and then we're looking for front matter down here. Now I have it up here in recents, but you may not. So just come down here and find front matter and click on that. Then we're going to drag that, and this can be a little tricky, but we're going to drag that over top of draft and drop it. Now you might have to play around with that to get that to actually work. Sometimes it falls inside of draft and then you have to keep dragging it. So what is this and why did I do it? The reason I did this is because front matter contains particular information. I just right clicked it and clicked add and then new text. It contains particular information. For example, it might have your copyright information in here. So you would have copyright here, goes here. You might have acknowledgments. You might have a title. You could have various things that you put in front matter that you don't necessarily want to show up on a Kindle version of your book, but you want to show up on your CreateSpace version of your book. So by putting it here as opposed to inside of the document itself, you can tell Scrivener during the compilation phase to include this or not to include it. So it's kind of neat because it allows you to do a whole bunch of stuff up front. And then if you say, okay, I'm going to create this version for maybe Apple or CreateSpace or Barnes& Noble or even Amazon, if you want to do it that way, then you can go ahead and export with this included, and it allows you to keep it separate from your document. Or you can say, well, since I'm putting it on Kindle or Apple or Barnes& Noble, I don't want the copyright information to go up here. I don't want the acknowledgments and stuff to go up here. So instead, I'm going to tell Scrivener not to include the front matter when building for those particular exports. And then of course you could have the copyright at the end of the draft instead of at the beginning of it. And then, then it's a matter of, did you include this in the compile or do you not include it in the compile? But those are things that I've talked about in a different series on how to do compilations for these. So check those out for that information. I don't really want to get into the weeds on that here. Okay, what I do want to talk about though is how do we bring the book in from Word. So first off, let me go ahead and show you. Here's basically a few chapters that I just cut and paste from a Scrivener document that I was using and put it into Word over here. So nothing fancy. It's just a book, right? So there's a couple of ways that you can do this. One way is you could right click and you could add new text and you could say chapter 1, and you could go through all of that and do it one at a time, cutting each individual chapter. That's going to take a long time, and actually I've done that many times. It's not a fun experience to go through it. Another option is you can click on draft, you can go to file, import, files, and then choose the file that it is you're going to actually be importing. Double click on that. And that's neat, except for you notice it brought it all into one chapter basically over here. And remember, Scrivener, the way Scrivener is set up, is not meant to be one chapter. It's meant to be broken up into multiple chapters. So this kind of stinks, actually. If we look at this, we don't really want to have this layout. It just doesn't really work for us. So I'm going to go ahead and move this one into the trash. So that one kind of failed. The one that's pretty neat, though, is we click on draft. You got to make sure this is blue, because if you click anywhere else in here, it's just going to put it wherever else you tell it. So make sure that draft, or if yours says manuscript, make sure that that is clicked. Then say file, import, and we're going to do import and split. Now you notice that typically it looks like this. But I don't like that because some folks actually do this as their scene breaks, for example. So I'm being very particular about this. And you can use a different layout if you want to, but I'm going to actually do 7 of these in a row. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. Now, before I even go there, I want to come back to the Word document and show you something. When I scroll down here, right before the next chapter, what I want to do is I'm going to hit enter and I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm going to put 7 of those things. Then I'm going to come down here to the end of this chapter, or I should say to the beginning of the next chapter, and I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to hit enter and then go back up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now I'm going to save this document. So I just saved it out. Okay, now when I come back here, what this is saying is I'm going to look for this combination of characters for whatever import file you tell me to grab, and I will split it on that. So here we are. I'm going to say, let's go ahead and grab Industrious, and then we're going to say open it, and look what it did. It split it into 3 documents for us, which is awesome. It's very quick this way. You just have to go into your Word document and add in those special characters so it can do it for you. And also notice that since it noticed that I had a particular piece bolded, it used that as the first piece of this. It wasn't even necessarily bolded. It's probably just the first line that it saw is what it's using for the title. I actually haven't really tested that. Now, for me personally, since I'm going to be, if you're going to follow the way that I do the compilation in other videos that I've shown before, then you're going to want to highlight and delete these, and then take those out because we're going to be reformatting these things during our compilation phase anyway. So we're not going to want them in there. Otherwise, they'll show up in your book twice, and you don't want that. So that's pretty much it. And then you go ahead and save it out. And now your entire book is in here. I'm going to leave it up to you to be able to create your own copyright information, obviously, and put it at the end of your book and your thank you pages and all that kind of stuff. That's still going to be on you. And in order to, just so you can see, in order to get that, you right-click on Draft, add new text, and it'll automatically put it at the very last part. So then you could say, thanks for reading. And then boom, there it is. Now, if you're going to do a thanks for reading, I said I wasn't going to show you this, but I'll show it anyway. If you're going to do something like a thanks for reading, you want to do these as compile as is. And so that means that you can have different formatting and styling than what's going to be inside of here. Because if you don't do that, then basically all of your text in here, let's just say, for example, that your final layout happens to be justified and you have a 25-point indent and you don't have any spaces in between, etc., etc., and it's all a particular font and so on, it's going to force anything that does not have compile as is going to be forced into that same format as this. So if you have compile as is, what that's saying is that you can do anything you want over here. You can say thanks a bunch, right? And so you can actually bold, italicize, underline, make it a 48-point font, etc. You can do all this kind of stuff, and since it says compile as is, it's not going to let the styling be overridden by the compilation phase. So that's what this is for, this compile as is. However, if you notice over here, compile as is not checked, which means it is, I'm saying go ahead and override whatever I have. One more thing I want to point out. When I imported this guy, I had this little scene break in here, okay? Sometimes these might come in like that, where they might come in looking like this, for example. So whenever that happens, you want to go through and make sure you want to check all of these. So go in, go back to this, set the margin back to 0 on this, highlight it, set it back to 0, and then select center. And that way you can be sure that this is in the right spot. Otherwise, you might not notice it, but maybe this is over just a little. Oh, whoops, I had the wrong thing highlighted there. Maybe this is over a little bit like this, and you can't quite tell because it looks kind of centered. But when you get into the book, you're going to notice that this is wrong. And so just do yourself a favor and make sure that anything that has a scene break that you're using this style of scene break is centered and is using this. The compilation that, if you're using the methodology that I talk about in the other videos, you'll find out that it will ignore specific cases like this, so that way it doesn't try to apply formatting to these guys. So I think that's about it. Everything should be covered here to get you started, and hopefully that helps you out.